I wanted to briefly talk Keith Thurman versus Robert Guerrero. I got an email with my thoughts on the fight. The reaction to this has been exceptionally positive from the public. People view this as a really impressive fight, a real big step up for Keith Thurman, and I've had people saying they're not sure who's going to win. It's quite a 50-50 gap, 50-50 fight even. Some people seeing some gaps in Thurman's game that they think Robert Guerrero can exploit. Let me say, I'm not one of those people. I think this is an easy fight for Keith Thurman. I think potentially this is a much easier fight than Leonard Bundu, who's a welterweight that I rate very highly. Let's put it this way. Robert Guerrero, he's got a legacy. He's well known. He's got a high public profile. He's a well-respected fighter. But let's not forget, this is a guy who first came to prominence at featherweight. This fight is not taking place at featherweight, nor super featherweight, nor lightweight, nor light welterweight, but it's taking place at welterweight against Keith Thurman, the guy who's previously fought at light middleweight. Keith Thurman's a massive welterweight. Let's remember, Robert Guerrero, despite all of his legacy, despite all of his fantastic nights, and despite all of his wins, has only actually been fighting in the welterweight division as a sort of fully devoted welterweight for his past 4 fights. Now, over those past 4 fights, he beat Selçuk Aydın, who's a guy, he's a respectable fighter. In my opinion, certainly not a top 20 welterweight in the current market. And that was a closest fight that Guerrero clearly won. There was then the Andre Berto fight, the Floyd Mayweather fight, and the Kamagai fight. I would strongly suggest that Robert Guerrero has never beaten a top 10 welterweight. It is debatable whether he's ever beaten a top 15 welterweight. The guy's got a lot of ring experience. The guy's got an iron chin. But there are gaps to his game. If you look at the Berto fight, if you look at the Mayweather fight, the guy is defensively open. He isn't these days a master boxer in terms of his defensive capability. If you look at his most recent fight, the Kamagai fight, I know that was a fight of the year contender, but let's forget about that for just 1 second. Whilst it was an entertaining fight, this was a guy who shouldn't really even be in the same ring with Robert Guerrero at his best. And it's a guy who was causing him all sorts of problems, at times beating him up throughout that fight. If a guy like Kamagai is going to do that to Robert Guerrero, what is a guy like Keith Thurman, young, unbeaten, power punching, a guy who's already proven himself? I genuinely think the Leonard Bundu win, possibly even the Diego Chavez win, represents better form at welterweight than any of Robert Guerrero's welterweight form. I know Guerrero is a step up in terms of name, in terms of profile, in terms of public perception, but I don't view Guerrero as to be as tricky as an opponent as Bundu. I think Guerrero's there to be hit. Keith Thurman has proven to us, not only can he knock people out, not only does he have that power, but he can also box smart. He can also go the distance. He can also outbox a talented opponent like Bundu. For me, Robert Guerrero has never been a top-class welterweight. A top-class super featherweight, a top-class lightweight maybe, but not top-class at 147. He's never beaten a top 10 opponent at 147. He's never looked at his best at 147. And now, with recent inactivity, into his 30s, coming off a very, very tough fight against a young, hungry opponent like Keith Thurman, I don't view this as a difficult night's work for Keith Thurman. I expect Keith Thurman to win, and win convincingly. Guerrero is very tough, very, very durable. I think you get to a point when you start fighting top 15 opponents like maybe Guerrero, like maybe Bundu, where your power isn't enough to get you through. I mean, we saw that with Wilder and Thurman. Wilder, one of the biggest punchers there is, but he had to rely on more than just power. and I think Keith Thurman's getting to that stage now. So I'm not going to go out and predict that Thurman beats Guerrero by knockout. But what I am saying is that I expect it, if it does go to points, to be a very, very wide decision for Keith Thurman. I don't see him losing this fight. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.